The waves crashed against the ship with such force that the water swept the few people on deck and broke the thick masts. The cracking of wood was terrible. From everywhere heard the screams of the wounded, and she, locked in her cabin, did not get tired of praying that this nightmare would soon end, to swim to shore. The future Queen of England, Berengaria of Navarre, did not yet know that on the coveted land of captivity awaited her. She was born on a clear sunny morning in early March, on the occasion of which in Pamplona, the capital of Navarre, organized a 3-day celebration. Daughter of the king, granddaughter of the king, sister of the king, she was to have a brilliant future. Yes, Berengaria's father ruled a small kingdom sandwiched between Spain and France, but he knew how to build relations with his neighbors, and the state prospered. At the court of Sancho VI, they tried to focus on the French, or rather, on the rich Provençal culture. Therefore, young Berengaria from childhood studied not only Latin and foreign languages, but also wrote poetry, practiced music, and adored jousting tournaments. In 12th century Pamplona, they knew a lot about this kind of entertainment. A hospitable king and a richly laid table always attracted guests from all over the world. Not surprisingly, the English Crown Prince Richard decided to attend one of the celebrations in the heart of Navarre. The Navarre princess was 15, the heir to the throne, and at the same time, the ruling earl, 23. At one point, Richard, who had won the duel, rode up to the princess to collect his prize. According to the rules, he was supposed to stay near her only a few moments, but it turned out otherwise. The English prince could not take his eyes off Berengaria, so that the ruler of Navarre had to jokingly divert his attention to the fact that the tournament was actually over. Berengaria was considered a beauty, dark-haired, dark-eyed, slender. But there were enough beautiful girls in the court of Sancho the Wise. The princess differed from them by her sharp mind, and Richard soon found out. Their conversations did not last long. There was not enough time. But, as everyone soon became convinced, the prince had time to make far-reaching conclusions. As soon as he became King of England, Richard announced to his mother that he had decided to marry a Navarre princess. To settle all the necessary formalities, Queen Eleonora of Aquitaine traveled to Pamplona. The same amazing woman who had been sovereign of 2 kingdoms, first France and then England. Richard was her favorite son, so she was ready to fulfill any of his orders. But what about the groom? Alas, the political situation in Europe required him to act immediately. Richard Plantagenet, nicknamed Lionheart, went on crusade. It was decided to organize a wedding on the way. The union of Richard and Berengaria suited everyone. The Duchy of Aquitaine, belonging to the King of England, received loyal allies from the south, and the Kingdom of Navarre had powerful friends from the north. The bride's family was embarrassed only by the fact that it would have to do without the festivities due to the dignity of both parties. After all, the wedding was not to be between a knight and a girl, but between a king and a princess. Berengaria was generous. She liked the groom. She wanted to try on the role of the queen, so she agreed to go after Richard. Queen Eleonora herself took the princess to Naples, and here came an unexpected obstacle. On the future marriage of Richard and Navarre princess learned the French King Philip II Augustus, and he dreamed of marrying Lionheart to his sister, Adele. The piquancy of the situation was that Adele, the French king's sister, had been living in England for some time. The girl was being prepared as a bride for the crown prince, but she so liked King Henry II, then occupying the English throne, that Adele became his mistress. The connection of the monarch with a Frenchwoman angered the court of London, and Richard, most of all. Therefore, when he, after the death of his father, was offered to marry Adele, he most resolutely refused to take up the baton. Of course, Philip Augustus knew of his sister's connection to Richard's father, but he didn't want to give up the plan. There were arguments, threats. Pamplona was worried, but Richard managed to emerge victorious from the situation. The French king withdrew his demands. So Princess Berengaria went on a ship to her future husband. In this voyage, the company of the Navarre princess was Richard's sister, Joanna of England. The two girls quickly became friends and socialized then for the rest of their lives. But the voyage to the Holy Land was long and difficult. There was a storm. The ship with the royal bride almost sank. Huge waves crashed on the ship. Some of the crew simply washed into the sea, but the two princesses, English and Navarre, managed to survive. Their ship was carried to the shores of Cyprus. All the accompanying ships crashed near Limassol. Once on land, the girls began to ask for help. Who they were, they did not even hide. Just for this reason, the Emperor of Cyprus, Isaac Komnenos, decided to take them prisoner. After all, he could demand a large ransom. Richard quickly found out what had happened. Abandoning all business, he immediately left in the direction of Limassol and quickly seized the island of Cyprus, and with him an Emperor Komnenos. Realizing that it is no longer possible to delay, and fate itself shows him the way, Richard offered Berengaria to marry there in Cyprus. The Navarrian princess, in the presence of the groom's sister and his assistants, gave wedding vows to the King of England and was proclaimed queen. For several more years, Berengaria followed her husband on his military campaigns. It is known that she was present at the siege of Acre, and when the city was taken, spent truly happy days with Richard in the opulent palace. For a time, the Queen of England lived at Jaffa and Laterna, and it was not until a year later that Berengaria's ship sailed back to Europe. On the return journey, they were separated. Richard was captured. Berengaria was luckier. She arrived safely in Rome and spent 6 months there, remaining under the protection of the Pope. Rome provided Berengaria with escorts so she could get to Navarre, and from there she traveled to Poitou, a large city in the Duchy of Aquitaine, which belonged to her husband. For 2 years, Berengaria did not see Richard. When he was released from captivity, it seemed most logical that the Lionheart would go to his queen. But the king did not come. Queen Berengaria of England wrote letters to her husband. She waited for him for many more months, until she decided to take a more drastic step. She came to her husband herself for Christmas. It was a short, and by no means their best meeting. Perhaps they heard mutual reproaches. Perhaps Richard completely cooled to the girl for whom he had once seized the island of Cyprus. What was the reason for this? Some researchers tend to believe that Richard was disappointed in the Navarre princess. She failed to give him an heir. Others believe that the English king was not interested in women at all. Richard died as a warrior at the siege of the castle, quite soon after their last meeting, in the arms of his beloved mother. His wife was told 4 days later. Berengaria never married again. She remained Queen of England, queen without a kingdom. Never once visited London, never saw her own domains. She chose Le Mans, France, as her residence. From there she often wrote to her relative, the new English King John. The fact is that Berengaria, as Richard's widow, was entitled to a considerable inheritance, and King John was in no hurry to pay it. For many years between London and Le Mans was a correspondence, but the debts were paid not by John and his son, Henry III. The Princess of Navarre outlived Richard by 30 years. Toward the end of her life, she became very devout and founded a new monastery, but it is difficult to say whether Berengaria found solace. In her life there were few happy moments, but they all turned out to be so vivid that so begs on the pages of adventure novels. The Queen of England, who never set foot on her own soil,